Welcome back to National Board Conversations. I'm your host, Edward Santiago, and today we're joined by the incredible Nicole Greene, a National Board Certified Special Education teacher making a difference in Westchester County, New York. She is a fantastic teacher and a powerful advocate for equity and inclusion, serving on committees for the Council for Exceptional Children and as an ambassador for Teachers Unify to end gun violence. Her dedication has earned her well-deserved recognition, including the 2024 National Center for Learning Disabilities Everyday Champion Award. Join us as we explore Nicole's inspiring journey and her passion for empowering educators, ensuring every student reaches their full potential. Here's my conversation with Nicole Greene. Nicole Greene, thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, Eddie. I'm so good, and I'm so happy to be here. How are you?
Doing well. It's finally warming up here in DC. Hopefully, we're on a trajectory with warmer weather. But
not here in New York.
All right, so we'll get right into it. Can you give us a brief intro of yourself? What's your current role and what you do? And then we'll get into a couple of more personal questions to let you know you a little bit on the personal side.
Yeah, definitely. So currently I teach in a sixth grade. I teach sixth grade at a public middle school in Westchester County. For those of y'all who don't know New York, because it's a big place, you got Manhattan, you got Harlem, you got the Bronx, and then Westchester is just above that. So anybody who says we're upstate ain't true. We're closer to the city than the rest of y'all. But yeah, I teach in Westchester County. I teach both self-contained and some people call it inclusion classes. In New York, we call them integrated co-teaching. And I teach math, science, social studies, and an academic support period for my kiddos.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. So what are your 3 favorite foods?
Okay, this is hard because about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit less, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and I found out I'm allergic to gluten. And I am, not super inspired by what's on the menu for me these days. But I'll give you my 3 favorites, like pre-diagnosis. It's got to be pasta, burritos, and sushi.
All the gluten, just all of it.
Yeah, exactly. All the gluten, and now I can't have none. I'm Italian American, and my grandma was like, "You can't be allergic to gluten," and I was like, "Baby girl, I don't know what to tell you."
Oh yeah, listen, it's not my fault. So what are your 3 favorite? What are 3 songs that shaped you?
Okay, this is also a hard question because I love music. I grew up on rap, hip hop, R&B. So like picking 3 top songs is like, I don't know, kind of like picking a favorite child. So if it's okay with you, I'm gonna pick 3 artists instead.
Here we go.
Eminem got me through elementary and middle school. I discovered Bob Marley when I was like probably in 7th or 8th grade, and my mom was like, "What is happening here?" Because that was like
Uh-oh.
blasting Buffalo Soldier through the house. But I stuck it out with Bob Marley for a long time. I had my first son right when COVID hit, and he was 5 weeks old. We had nowhere to go, nothing to do, nowhere to be. So we would have Bob Marley dance parties with him, me and my husband, when he was like a tiny, tiny baby. Um, and then finally, actually, A$AP Ferg. He reps New
Oh,
York. He reps New York pretty
okay.
hard, and he is my favorite rapper. But now I'm sitting here feeling bad that I left out my girls, Cardi, Beyonce, Megan, Aaliyah. Did you know Aaliyah is actually buried in Hartsdale in Westchester County?
Oh
I'm gonna go
wow,
to
that's pretty
Little
cool,
did you know. Little did you know.
man. All right, so the one sports team that has your heart, and if you're not a sports person, a movie you can recite line for line.
Okay, I love this. Currently, I'm really obsessed with track and field.
Okay.
I'm obsessed with Noah Lyles, Sha'Carri Richardson, Gabby Thomas. But like, I'm not like, I would love to be really fast. I'm very short. So I don't have those sprinting skills. So I like to watch track and field. I grew up liking the Jets and the Knicks, but I have to be so honest. The Lakers have my heart.
Oh, the Lakers.
I grew up obsessed with Kobe Bryant, right? And I was actually my son was supposed to be born. I had scheduled for an induction on January 26th. And then Kobe got in that plane crash, and I was like, guys, I'm not coming in. Like, we got to pick a different day because my son could not be born the same day that we lost Kobe. And then I've been a longtime LeBron fan on and off the court. I love his work with kids. So the Lakers actually, yeah, they have my heart.
All right, so you're a big hoop head. I like it.
Listen, I played until maybe seventh grade. Like I was 5'1" when I was like in fourth grade. I was really tall. And then I stayed 5'1" in fifth and in sixth and in seventh and in eighth. And finally I was like, yeah, no, there's just not, I
That's
didn't have
usually
the
how it
dribbling
goes.
skills to be 5'1" on the court, you know?
That's usually how it goes. Like, all right, tall early, and then then it's over
And
with.
then it's over. And now my son is like, you're kind of medium. I'm like, all right, you be quiet over there.
Hey, at least he gives you that, right? He ain't calling you short.
That's because he's smaller than me for now. We'll
All
see.
right. So, can you share why you became an educator and more specifically a special education teacher?
Okay, yeah. So picture me, I'm in second grade, right? I was probably tall then too. But like I still hear schools doing this, which I think is so funny. But it's second grade and it's famous person day. And my classmates are dressed up like the Spice Girls. We got some In Sync, we got some Princess Diana. And I am in a bonnet and an 1800s style dress. I can still picture my like read my cue cards, my flashcards, and I'm sitting there telling my classmates how my name is Anne Sullivan and I taught Helen Keller how to read. I don't know when I decided that I wanted to be a teacher, but it was as long as I could remember. When I was little, I used to say, I'm gonna be a lifeguard in the summer and I'm gonna be a teacher the rest of the year. I never really figured out the whole swimming thing, and I heard you can't save people doggy paddling, so that lifeguard thing never really panned out for me. But I got my first teaching job right at 21, and I never looked back. When it comes to special ed, I think that's really like it was kind of like equal parts serendipity and timing. I had initially, actually, my undergrad was in Italian studies and secondary education. School was really hard for me. Italian was like the one area that I was really good at, not just like good at, but actually advanced in. And there was not a single other class that I could say that about. I loved the culture and the language, and I really wanted to teach Italian because I wanted kids to fall in love with it the way that I did. I also think like I'm from Long Island where there's lots of Italian people, right? So Italian kids take Italian class to reconnect with their culture. And I think that I really wanted to be a part of that. Um, but then during my undergrad career, I started volunteering in pediatric oncology, and then it kind of shifted. I thought I wanted to be a school reentry specialist, which is somebody who works in the hospital and helps like it's sort of like a liaison between schools and the child who's going through treatment. So I really wanted to do that. So I took a school reentry training, and then I learned about the connection between like going through chemo and learning disabilities. So I decided I was going to shift again and sort of I applied to get a special education degree at Hunter College in the city. Um, right out of college, actually it's odd to say right now because there's this insane teacher shortage right across the country. But at the time, the field was actually pretty saturated. So I was told, like, you take whatever job you can get, right? So I got a call from this school. I think I like looked at their like the early days of LinkedIn. I looked at their LinkedIn or something. I get a call from the school and they asked me if I want to come interview to for a teaching job there. And so I go and I take this interview. And that choice right there changed the course of my entire life. I interviewed and got the job. And I'll never forget the head of the school at the time, Bill DeHaven. He said to me, what do you think about teaching math? And I remember thinking, this man wants to ruin my life. Um, and Bill, if you ever hear this, I have to thank you for just about everything that I have and everything that I am today. I looked this man straight in the face and I was like, I can't teach math. I'm terrible at it. Like, you're crazy. And he said, that's why you're going to be such a good math teacher. You know what it's like to struggle. And I think, from that point on, I never looked back. And I've been teaching special ed since then.
That's pretty awesome. That's a fun story. Like it's a very, like you said, serendipitous and random, but it's kind of cool that
Yeah.
you needed there.
Yeah. I don't know how I got there, but I'm here and I haven't gone, haven't looked back since.
So you talked a little about you what you were like as a student. So what were you like as a student? How does it influence how you teach?
Yeah. So, how I was as a student, it really has everything to do with how I teach, the way I engage with my students. I think, when Bill DeHaven told me I'd be a great math teacher because I struggled so much, I came to realize that that was really my calling in life, was to create a classroom where no kid felt like I did in school. Needless to say, and probably the like exaggeration of the century, is I was really not the ideal student. It's still like a running joke in my family that every single progress report and report card I had in school, not exaggerating, every single one said talks too much, easily distracted, and distracts others. And I truly could not stop talking. I don't know if you noticed, but that's
I was
still
wondering
true.
these feelings too.
I know you're not going to drag me, but I'll say it. I'll drag me. I can't stop talking. Um, I was also like extremely internally distracted. I remember like when I was in fourth grade, I would take the like my reading comprehension test, and I would just tell myself these stories about like the questions, and then I would like tell myself stories about the like answer choices, and then I would just pick one that was like based on the story that I was like going through internally. And it didn't even occur to me that this was a test that was going to be on my report. Like I was so out to lunch. But I think that it was more than that, right? So from a young age, I think, if I'm being really, really frank, the school system failed me. I was, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't memorize any math facts. I counted on my nose until I was like well into elementary school. And my family kind of like teased me relentlessly about it. So I started counting on my fingers underneath the desk, which I still do, by the way. And when I was reading, like learning how to read, I would track and I would like whisper the words, which also drove my family insane. The truth is, like in the 90s, the knowledge on learning disabilities was just so different. And I don't blame my family, right? They didn't know that they were like shunning me and like pushing me away from learning. It was just, we didn't know what to look for when kids were like struggling. It was just such a different time. But I was so embarrassed and frustrated that it turned me off to like learning altogether. I stopped reading at home. My mom would try to bribe me with toys, and I was like, I don't even care about toys. Like I was so against the idea of learning. I just felt so dumb, and I felt so like embarrassed. I hated books. I hated math. I just like, it wasn't for me. And on top of that, I like really couldn't keep track of anything. Shirts, jackets, backpacks gone. I would leave school and my parents would pick me up and they'd be like, "Where's your backpack?" Like, who leaves school without a backpack? It's pretty, like
Yeah.
it's probably pretty obvious what's coming next. But I actually didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was an adult. Um, but I was the kid that was telling my mom, like, "Oh, I have a research paper on puffins tomorrow," right? But this was the 90s and they didn't have the internet. So like the
Yeah.
library already done had been closed. And my mom is like, "That research paper on puffins is not happening, okay?" But like, just like all of those executive functioning skills, the internal distraction, the struggling with like those low level concepts really made it hard for me, not just to learn, but to like feel good about myself, to feel confident. And my parents were very, very strict about like my success in school. I was not allowed to bring home a grade that was below a 90, which obviously like with my learning challenges was really difficult. And so I had to develop a lot of coping skills, but I also just, it was so hard. I had to work so, so hard to feel so subpar. And not a single teacher noticed that I was struggling. Not a single teacher asked my parents about like the anxiety that I was experiencing. Because I had to do so well on tests, I would avoid them altogether because I felt like, or I knew I couldn't do well on them. I would fake illnesses, go home early, hide in the nurse's office. Like I was pulling all the stops.
Beautiful
And
guys.
and no teacher was like, "I think she has anxiety. I think she had," like nobody noticed me. And because I did well in school, nobody, there was just no intervention in place. And I think carrying the weight of my school experience is really crucial to who I am as a teacher, both in the classroom and out. It's really my mission to make sure my students know they're not dumb, they're not lazy, they're not bad at math, they're just neurodiverse. And they can do anything they set their minds to. I tell them that honestly, frankly, it's really frustrating and really exhausting, right? Like we have to work a million times harder than the neurotypical students do, only to get results that don't reflect how brilliant and brave we are, that don't reflect how hard we worked. And I'm so proud of my neurodivergences. I have both ADHD and OCD. And they really make me who I am. I have more energy in a whole day than most people do in an hour. And when I get into like hyper focus mode, I can complete an insane amount of work. But I'm also not like toxic positive about it with my students or with myself. Being neurodivergent is beautiful, but it's also really, really hard. And so that's, it's really the crux of like how I treat my students. But I also have come over the last few years to really realize that if I want to help my students, and my meaning really like all of the neurodiverse students in my districts, in my state, and even in our country, it's really, in order to not create or recreate a me as a student, parents and teachers need more training. I don't want the school system to fail kids the way that it failed me. I don't want kids who have such obvious symptoms and struggles to go unidentified and unsupported. So advocacy has become a really, really crucial part of my work. I believe that I believe in my heart that the problem really is bigger than the four walls of my classroom. I can help my students understand their brains and create a learning space that's accessible and engaging. And I can help them see themselves as smart and brave and capable. But like, what if teachers that came before me did the same thing? What if my work wasn't so focused on unbreaking kids? What if they just never became broken in the first place? There are some really staggering statistics that I think schools and families should know about the neurodivergent community. Eddie, did you know that 1 in 3 kids with disabilities are victims of maltreatment?
No, that's super high. Whoa.
Yeah, that's in comparison to 1 in 10 non-disabled children, and kids with mental illnesses, cognitive disabilities, ADHD, and ASD experience higher rates of violence, which makes sense, right? Because a lot of parents who don't understand their kids and don't understand the behaviors and the challenges that they present, like it can feel really personal and it can feel really intentional. And they just think like, if I punish them, if I punish it out of them, they'll stop, right? Um, Furthermore, about 40% of kids with disabilities report being bullied by peers. And I think, it probably goes without saying, for obvious reasons, students experience of emotional violence at schools is really difficult to kind of get your hands on. But a 2018 study done by the Northern Michigan University, it included over 1,000 teachers, and it asked questions centering on public shame and embarrassment. And only 14% of teachers, that's right, 14% reported never witnessing another teacher emotionally abuse a kid. 14%.
Wow.
So, I think I'm really, really passionate, not about just like what I do in my classroom matters. It's how I, show up for my kids every single day. But I want and I hope that more teachers, all teachers can see that kids are struggling, not just the ones that are like obviously struggling with grades, but the high performing students too. And I feel like until these statistics change, I can't rest. And until we do a lot more for students with neurodivergence, I'm gonna use that strength that I have to talk, and I'm gonna keep on talking.
Yeah, it sounds like your experience has been very informative to your views on neurodiversity and education. It's
Yeah.
so with all this experience, you decided to pursue national board certification, you're national board certified. What pushed you to pursue?
Yes. Yeah, that's such a great question. So, there was a variety of factors. First, I was teaching at a small special education school at the time. And don't get me wrong, it's not that there weren't great teachers there. But with the exception of one colleague who wasn't in the classroom, she was more in an admin role. No one was like inspiring me, right? And I'm like, I don't know if you can tell, I'm really passionate about teaching. And there was just no one who was like kind of igniting my fire. So I was just kind of I was feeling kind of stagnant. And then I also just believe really wholeheartedly that like my students deserve the best teacher that there is, right? So whatever I need to do, I'm going to keep moving the needle, pushing, pushing, pushing until I am the best teacher. And that's never going to stop because, as we grow, even in the last like 12 years that I've been teaching, our understanding of neurodivergence and kids who think and learn differently has grown so much. So I think, good teaching is founded in lifelong learning and in moving that ball forward. What's the new pedagogy? What's working? What's not, right? And changing and responding as kids change and respond. So I was feeling really stagnant. I wanted to keep getting better. I'm always sort of like on a new teaching project, a new fellowship, a course, a degree, a certification, whatever it is. And so I was looking for something, but I didn't want to. At the time, I was teaching in California, and listen, I love California. I love the Lakers, right? But New York has my heart. So I knew that we were going to move back there. So getting a master's degree and getting certified in California wasn't really helpful. So I was like, what am I going to do next? And then I went to the National Network of State Teacher of the Year conference in 2018. It was in LA. And there was just teacher after teacher after teacher that was board certified. And like everyone was cheering for them every time they said they're an NBCT, like people were losing it. And I was like, that's it. That's the thing. And so I kind of jumped right in. I did all 4 components in 1 year, which is not for the faint of heart, but I actually wouldn't change it. I wouldn't do it any other way. It was the best process.
Yeah, 1 year is that's a lot.
It was, you know what? I actually think there's lots of schools of thought, right, on the process of certification. And some people do like 1 and 3 together and 2 and 4 together, based on like how they, sort of how they are like interconnected. But I really feel like I spent like 1 month on each component, 2, 3, and 4. I studied for one, like for a long time, but 2, 3, and 4, I would spend 1 month on each one, and then I would just sort of rotate, like go back to each one. And I was finding that by doing them all together, like they really were so interweaved, and just focusing on it, just like I was eating, sleeping, living, breathing national boards. And I think like doing it all in 1 year really like kept that fire going. Whereas maybe if I was doing them one at a time, like it would just be easier to like kind of, I don't know. That was my experience.
Yeah, so what kind of impact did achieving have on your career?
Honestly, I wouldn't even say it had an impact on my career. It flat out saved it. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. The whole process, right, is based on reflection. And I think that before going through the process, I really didn't know how to be a reflective educator. I think I thought I did. But despite being neurodivergent and having this like really in-depth understanding of neuropsychology, of learning disabilities, of how kids learn, I was just super burnt out. I felt exhausted. I was living break to break. I was surrounded by other burnt out and frustrated educators, and I kind of just like fell in line with them. But becoming national board certified taught me how to be reflective in my practice. It taught me to ask questions and dig deeper. I was teaching lesson to lesson, test to test, bucketing students as I got it or didn't get it, evaluating myself and my students kind of as like good or bad, yes or no. And then through the certification process, I really learned how to reflect rather than evaluate. I learned that like you can both look at the bigger picture and notice the details. And when you kind of like flip flop between the two, that's where you really like sort of see yourself and see your students. I learned to see my students as like malleable and in progress. And I became able to use my understanding of their brains more effectively. So, in that process of doing those things, I started to become less burnt out. I learned how to become more effective. I stopped taking things so personally. And I really just became able to like reflect rather than like pass judge. It also, I think this was really key too, like the network of national board certified teachers helped me so much because like I said, like there are just, it's really awful to say, but being student centered does not always make you popular in schools. It isn't cool. It isn't funny to be the teacher who like pushes back on the like sort of classic faculty room discussions. And it can be really isolating. And, I understand why it is the way that it is. But there are lots of schools that are really full of like disenfranchised and frustrated teachers. But becoming national board certified helped me find my people. I'm so passionate about teaching, and like the people who are taking the time to become national board certified and not giving up up when they don't certify or not giving up when they didn't get the score they wanted on a component. Those are your people, right? So like when you find them and they empower you, you don't worry so much about being that oddball at your school. And it also really encouraged me to like walk away from schools where that was the dominant culture. And so like it helped me not just be a better teacher in the classroom, but be a better advocate outside of the classroom, find my people, which pushes you for like, you know, kind of pushes the ball along further for you. So yeah, like full stop, it saved my career.
So, what advice would you give other special education teachers considering pursuing national board certification?
Do it. I know that's short, not an elaborate answer, but I can't say it enough. It's the best choice I ever made. I wouldn't be in special education without my homie Bill DeHaven, but I wouldn't have stayed in teaching without national board certification. It saved me from being like begrudging and cranky, and the students are the problem. And it really turned me into somebody who sees myself just doing this year after year with love and excitement and joy. You'll become more reflective, you'll become more patient, you'll become more thoughtful, and you will also learn so much about yourself. So yeah, do it.
So, what do you enjoy most about being an educator?
Okay, that's a hard question because obviously I really love it. What do I love most about education? I would say what I love most is that you have the opportunity like every single day to just like ignite someone's joy for life, ignite their joy for learning. But I'm really mindful. Like I also, you know, I think there's a lot of, like there's some saviorism in teaching that I'm really mindful of, and I can, you know, like I worry a little bit about that sort of idea. But I think, you know, like there's this, well, let me just say this. I have this mantra that I live by. It's my decision making, my guidance, my planning, and it's leave it better than you found it. There's a story behind it. My student, you know, kind of came up with it. But I think what I love most about teaching is that every single day is an opportunity to do that. I have the opportunity to, you know, work with families and collaborate and problem solve and take these humans that are malleable and excited, or maybe they're not excited, they're struggling, and help them understand themselves better. Again, like I don't like that deficit model. I'm not somebody who thinks you're fixing kids or saving them. I don't like that idea that you can be the one person to change a kid's trajectory, right? But when we lead from this place of leave it better than we found it, we can take a kid as they are and help them move the ball forward. We can help their caregivers better understand them and their brains. We can help fellow educators better understand the students in front of them, help schools create new systems and sustain these systems that make schools more equitable and accessible and inclusive. So I think the idea that you get to like collaborate to make our country a better place, to make the people in our country a better place, to create, um, you know, every job is gonna at the like create the people who are in every workforce. Whatever the it is in our lives, there's an it for everyone and everything. But I think if we all focus on just leaving whatever that it is better, we could really create like an awesome place for future generations.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. So, you are an ambassador for ending gun violence. What
Yeah.
motivated you to become an ambassador, and what specific activities and initiatives do you get involved in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like when I was a senior in high school, I had this amazing teacher, Mr. Paul. I don't say that about a lot of teachers that I had growing up, but Mr. Paul was a social justice warrior. And he taught social justice class and he taught life and death. And I signed up for every class he could or that he taught. But he showed us Bowling for Columbine. And that was really the first time that like I had thought much about school shootings. But honestly, the image of that movie just has never left my mind. If I close my eyes, I can see it right now. And then in my first week as a student teacher, Sandy Hook happened, and I'll never forget. At that time, like we had a department office, and my phone, my little iPhone 4 was in there, and I remember opening up my phone and reading it. And I can picture the colleagues that were in the room with me, and like I can smell that space, and you know that feeling, that experience, just it never left me. It was that moment, like a really pivotal moment, where I realized that I was putting my life on the line to do this job. And I think, my teaching career really developed alongside school shootings and lockdown drills. My first year was 2012. And we didn't do lockdown drills then, and not when I was in school, but they grew in frequency and intensity each year that I taught. And then when Parkland happened, I had already been doing some low-level advocacy, but I think that like that shooting really, really broke me. And the following school year, we had this like active shooter training. A police officer, I think it was a police officer, they came into our classroom, our school. It was the first day back. We had, like our cafegimatorium, which also happened to be my classroom at the time. And in this training, they have a police officer playing 911 calls for us. We're listening to educators talking on the phone with law enforcement. There's, you hear gunshots in the background. You are, hearing kids screaming, and the teachers are frantic. And then they're having us analyze these phone calls. They're saying, what did they do right? What did they do wrong? How could they, get help for themselves and their students faster? What could they have said to make it more helpful? And I was 17 weeks pregnant. I had the tiniest little baby bump, and I just remember cradling this like tiny bump and sobbing and thinking like, what are we doing? This is insanity. I don't want my son to grow up without a mom because I want to be a teacher. I always say, like, I have a small body. I will lay it across my students if I have to, but I really don't want to. I don't want to stuff them in closets. I don't want to have to lose my life or witness my kids losing their lives. I don't want to die teaching. This isn't what I signed up for. So since then, it's really been a no-brainer for me to advocate for safe storage, common sense gun laws, like nothing, nothing radical here, just like we need to keep children safe. And unfortunately, I really believe that gun violence is everyone's problem, and no one thinks it's going to happen to them until it does. Some of my students, when I taught in New York City, were in gangs, and gun violence was a very regular part of their lives. Or my students had to, like one of them, I remember he had to leave school early every day because, like in the winter, because his mom didn't want him like outside in their neighborhood in the dark. And actually, a few weeks after I had my second son, this was April 2022. A family friend's son, he died by gun violence over a fight on the street after a night out. And I'm mindful that this is not my story to tell. My family's sort of relationship with that family dissolved a few years before that happened. And I hadn't seen him in a long time, but I was so heartbroken for him and for his family. And then this past September, there was a shooting outside of the school that my sons attend. And, I'm not exaggerating when I really believe that gun violence is everyone's problem. And it circles, and then the circle gets smaller and closer. And also, I haven't even yet mentioned that gun violence is the number one leading cause of death of children in our country. So I don't know how I live by my motto of leave it better than you found it, and how I be a good mom and a good teacher if I don't devote all my time and energy to this cause. Not all of it, obviously, of other things.
As much as
Um,
you can.
so yeah, after Uvalde, I joined Teachers Unified and gun violence. Our organization was founded by two school shooting survivors, one from Parkland and one from Sandy Hook. And our goal is just to bridge the gap between educators and the gun violence prevention movement. As educators, we're the most knowledgeable on that which impacts kids, right? And we are the ones being asked to lay our lives on the line for them every single day. So we deserve a seat at the table. We deserve to have our voices heard. People should know, what our kids' experiences are during lockdown drills. And every time there's a school shooting, they should hear our voices. And so, I feel so proud of the work that we do. As an ambassador with Teachers Unify, I get to attend roundtables and lobby with members of Congress. I get to speak at rallies. We have some other things that are coming out that are super exciting, but our leaders are doing really amazing work. And our goal is to just make it a safer place for kids.
So what message do you have for educators who want to get involved in addressing gun violence?
I would say do it. There are some really amazing organizations. I think if you, want to be centered on the teacher end of it, and you want to be a voice, I would say join Teachers Unify. It's, it doesn't cost you anything to join. Our mission is to both educate people on gun violence prevention and to amplify the voices of educators. It's grassroots, it's teacher-led. But I'd also say, maybe you're not there yet, and that's okay, but just speak up. Believe in yourself. Know that your voice matters, your experiences matter, your safety matters, your students matter. And it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to live like this. And if you feel strongly about it, there are things you can do. But the worst thing you can do is stay silent. So find your people, find your voice. And if you haven't found either your people or your voice, call me. I got you.
All right, we're gonna get them in touch with you. We're gonna all right, so a couple more questions. We're gonna get into some teacher recruitment. If you had to sell the education profession to someone looking to get into it in 1 to 2 minutes, what would you use as your elevator pitch?
Elevator pitch. Okay. It's hard to shorten something that you're so passionate about to 1 to 2 minutes, but I would just say teaching is like no other profession. There's no right or wrong way to do it or to be a teacher. I think whatever you bring to the table will help shape the lives of the students, not shave the lives, shape them, shape the lives of the students in front of you. It's hard, it's intense, but it's exciting and it's exhilarating. You will laugh, you will cry, and you will fall in love. I believe this from the bottom of my heart. You will fall in love with humanity day after day, year after year, all over again. Our profession is so much more than the rhetoric that politicians and social media want you to think it is. Your people are there. They're doing the work every day. You won't be alone. So come through. We'd be so happy to have you.
All right. And we have a feature on the podcast called the shoulder tap. It's when you tap someone on the shoulder and let them know they're ready to become National Board Certified. You give them a shout out on here and we'll encourage them to go through the process. So Nicole, who are you shoulder tapping today?
Okay, she's gonna kill me. I love this. She's gonna kill me. But my friend Lorena Ducrow, she is another special educator at my school. She runs our student council. She creates the most incredible events for our students. She is the advocate of a lifetime for her students. She's a teacher's teacher, but she's also a student's teacher, which I don't know. It's so hard to be both, but she is. She's strong. She's brave. She inspires me. Lorraine, I'm gonna send this to you. You already embody everything that an NBCT is and so much more. So tap, tap, my love. It's time to put those letters next to your name. You are everything. Don't kill me. I love you.
All right, Lorraine, you up. All right, Nicole Greene, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, Eddie, it was such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was a great conversation with Nicole Greene. I'm so glad she shared her expertise and experience with us. I was particularly struck by her passion for teaching and her commitment to her students. I would also like to thank Nicole for her work as an ambassador for ending gun violence. Her work in this area is truly commendable. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to National Board Conversations on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. We would love to hear your feedback. You can also connect with Nicole on Instagram at MrsG_NBCT. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing. And stay passionate about education. This is Edward Santiago signing off.